So, Assalamu alaikum and a very good afternoon, dear students. So, as you know, in the previous lecture, we discussed about the elements of novel. Now, this is the last lecture of this chapter, that is 4.1. The we were discussing about the novels. So now here is the last point, the last topic of the chapter. So first we'll see what we discussed in the previous lecture. So here are the topics which we discussed. That was the elements of novel. So we discussed six elements in that. That was theme, plot, character, setting, conflict, language, style. So we discussed that how all the elements are so important that if we need to make form a story, if we need to form a proper novel, so there needs to be a proper setup of everything and the combination of every single element. So even if we remove theme from the novel, then there won't be any proper existence of novel. And even if we remove plot, then how it's going to form a story. So obviously without plot we can't form a story. And then character, the most important, as we know when we read any of the story or anything, so we know that how a character plays an important role. So we need to know that how every each and every single element is important. Then we also discussed about setting, about how uh, the weather matters, how the place matters, and the background and everything, how it matters and how it is important. We discussed in the previous lecture already. Then we also discussed conflict. Obviously, if we are reading any story, or if we are watching any movie, and the movie is just going flat without any twists and turns and without any conflicts between protagonist and antagonist, so obviously the readers or the people or the viewers won't take that much interest if there is no conflict in the story. Understood? So that's what the thing we need to understand. And language and style also matters a lot. That's all we also discussed in the previous lecture. So that's what the elements of novel, six elements. Now moving towards today's topic, that is types of novel. So this is the last topic, or the last subtopic we can say, from the history of novel. So there are certain types of novel particularly. So that's what we are going to discuss. So realistic novel, picaresque novel, historical novel, epistolary novel, gothic novel, autobiographical novel, allegorical novel, utopian dystopian novel, psychological novel, stream of consciousness novel, Bildung's Roman novel. I know there are some of the types which you must have not understood that what exactly it means even. So don't worry, I'm going to explain that. Yeah, but some of the novel that you can understand, like realistic novel, you can get a bit idea that how it can be or what exactly it will be. But still, don't worry about that. Now, so the first topic, that is realistic novel. So the realistic novel is a fiction that gives the effect of realism. Sometimes this is also called a novel of manner. It can be characterized by its complex characters with mixed motives that are rooted in the social class. The characters in the realistic novel interact with each other, characters, and undergo plausible and everyday experiences. So, this is basically the definition of realistic novel. So, if in simple words, if I tell you or if I explain, what is realistic novel? Something which feels like a real story, which gives the effect of realism or realistic novel. It will be based on fiction, but the author, the novelist, will try to give the effect of realism. It won't be real story, but the author will try to give an impact of realism into his story. And this kind of novels are also called as the novel of manners, in which a kind of a novel in which like a novelist tried to give the lesson or moral ethics, or the etiquettes of life. He will try to teach that through the novels. That's what basically the novel of manner. And even it can be characterized by the complex characters of the novel. And they will go through the different realistic stories or something like that. And then they will deal with the everyday experiences, like the way we live our life, the everyday life, the way we are living. So the author will try to give it that kind of touch in the stories, in the realistic stories, so that we can relate to it. Obviously, when we read any story, we always try to find some relevance in that, or something which we can relate with, or something like which feels like real, which feels like yeah, we have experienced it. I have gone through this situation, my friend have gone through this situation, or something like that. We starts relating with the stories, if we feel like yes, it is something very real. So that kind of a touch, an author or the novelist try to give to their story, so that it doesn't feel like fiction and it feels like realism. So that's what the realistic novel is all about. Moving towards another one, that is picaresque novel. Now, what is picaresque novel? So the word picaresque is originated from the Spanish word picaro. Okay, the word picaro have been taken from the Spanish. Okay, and now we are using the picaresque word, but previously in the Spanish word that was picaro, which meant rogue. Okay, a picaresque novel narrates the adventures of the protagonist, who is an eccentric or disreputable person in an episodic form. Now, if we talk about the story, which is based on adventure basically, we must have seen many of the movies in which the hero or the protagonist basically are doing lots of adventures in life, living kind of a adventurous life. So that's what it is all about. The story in which a novelist talks about or discuss about the adventures of life of a person, of a protagonist, then it is called as picaresque novel. Or they might write it in a episodic form, like or maybe in a basically there will be a story of adventure of a protagonist, but it might be there in a episodic form also. So that's what the picaresque novel is all about. It's not that difficult that you can't understand. Now, historical novel, when you hear the topic itself is very easy. You can easily get the idea what it might be basically about. So, historical novel is a novel set in a period earlier than that of the writing. It's very simple to understand. Basically, a novel which have been written on the basis of history, on the basis of the old events, the events which have already taken place. Understood? Means if I am writing the novel today, so I won't write about today itself. I will write about the past events, the things which have taken place in the past. That's what I will write. Then only I will be able to call it historical novel. So, like we know, we you must have studied history, so you must be aware that what exactly the history is all about. The past events, the past the fights, adventures, battles, and many things you must have studied in history. So that's what it is all about, the things which have already happened, and now putting those events, those incidents into the words through our novel. That's what called as historical novel. Next is epistolary novel. Now it might sound something new or like maybe difficult, so don't worry. The word epistolary derives from the Latin word epistola, which means a letter. So the word epistolary have been taken from Latin word, which was epistola, and the meaning of that epistola was a letter. Letter, you all know, I don't need to elaborate, right? The epistolary novel is that in which the writer presents the narrative through a series of correspondence or other documents. So basically, there will be a story, there will be a novel, which a novelist will write through the series. Like, he will represent it as if it's a series, or by using the documents. Like, you must have seen the movies in which there are certain characters who are, narrating the story by reading some of the letter or by finding some of the document, then the story extends. You must have seen that kind of movies, right? Where the any kind of letter, any kind of a document plays an important role, and the story is based on that only, and the whole story revolves around that. So that kind of a thing it is that you need to understand, that where the author, the novelist, takes the help of the documents and by which he extends the story. Although letters are the most common basis of for epistolary novels, so the letters are the most famous and the basic part of the this kind of novel, that is epistolary novel. Diary entries are also a popular form of this type, and even the diaries plays an important role, like basically something which have been previously written or something which have been documented previously. So those stuff will be taken through the novelist, and then he will represent those things in his writing, basically the novel, by using those things as a major part of the story. So the letter, if it is there, if there is any document or if there is any diary entries, so that will play the major role in the writing in the novel, and the whole story will be based on that particular thing. The another is Gothic novel. So the Gothic novel, the novels that include terror, mystery, horror, thriller, supernatural doom, death or decay or haunted buildings or are called the Gothic novels. So it's very simple to understand. The word Gothic novel you must have not heard previously, but the type of novel it is very simple, it is very easy to understand. You can easily understand. So let me tell you what exactly it is. So the novel, which is basically, deals with kind of terror. It can be any kind of terror. It can be like, like for example, if you have fear of anything, if you have any phobia of something, so you will somewhere like, you will have that fear in you. You will be, get traumatized with that fear. Sometimes it might possible, and you will feel like a terror. If it is something very something very little or small, not that big, so you might deal with it. But some if something get to another level, get to the another height, then it becomes kind of a terror for us. And like a mystery also, you must have seen the mysterious movies, right? When in which basically a writer deals with the mystery, like something which is hidden and people are trying to find the whole story behind the thing which is happening. What is the reason why he killed the person? If you are watching the movie, if if any of the a very sweet kind of a character, if there was any, and if they are like they were very sweet previously, they were very down to earth, very calm and cool nature, but all of a sudden if they turned towards completely different, like arrogant, rude, and like angry, so there must be a reason, right? If they turned towards a very different character, so that will become like a mystery for people. If it have been not shown in the movie, then it will become like a mystery, that what was the reason. And then the audience will try to find the reason, the readers will try to find the reason, and that why that person turned towards that another character, another kind of characteristics. So that's what becomes a mystery. Horror, you all know, it can be any kind of a horror of ghost or anything, if you think like that, and thriller, supernatural powers, you must know about that, what are the supernatural powers. So that's what it's all about, the supernatural doom, death or decay or haunted buildings. If the author, the novelist is discussing about the haunted buildings and discussing about the horror story, and discussing about the ghost and supernatural powers, these things will be considered under the Gothic novel. If the novelist is dealing with all these topics, all these things, then that novel will be called as Gothic novel. Moving towards another one, that is autobiographical novel. So the autobiography, you know what is autobiography, right? So what is autobiographical novel? The autobiographical novel is the novel based on the life of the author. So what it is? Basically the novel which is based on the author's life itself. Understood? That will be called as autobiographical novel. However, the author changes the places and names of the characters, or even may change or avoid certain details of his life. So, but what will be the thing? The author will not use his own name. Means the if the author is writing an autobiographical novel, he will not be using his own name or the places where he lived, the names like about these the characters around him, the other characters, if he is mentioning in the novel, he won't be mentioning the actual or the real name of the characters and even of the places. He might change the names of the places even of the characters, and even some of the details. It's not necessary that he will put all the actual details of his life. Maybe to make the novel more interesting and more maybe mysterious, or maybe something very attractive towards the readers, he might add something which have not even happened in his life or her life. So they might add some of the details which have not even happened in life, and they might avoid some of the details of their life, so that sometimes happen, even the writers, the authors, they don't want their life to become completely public. They, if even if they are writing about their own life, but certain things will be there which everyone would like to keep it personal and private. Understood? So they might not share those kind of stuff in their writings, so it's not necessary that they will share every single detail of their life in their story. It may or may not be in the first person narration, and it is not necessary that it will be a first person narration. Means it's not necessary that the author will only narrate. Maybe his story he himself is writing, but he is using the second person narration. Like for example, his life's story, someone else is narrating, someone else is telling the story of his life. Understood? That way also it might possible they will write. The another is allegorical novel. Now, what is allegorical novel? An allegory is a story that bears more than one level of meaning. The surface meaning of such novel is different from the symbolic. Okay, so the allegorical novel is basically something, a story which is whatever exactly the things have been told to you, it's not necessary it will be on that level only. Maybe on a surface level it's different, but if we go deep down, there will be something else only. Like it happens sometimes. You are watching a movie and you come to the conclusion at the end, like what you were expecting in the beginning, the story. Like for example, you were expecting it to be the love story, but at the end it became the tragic story, so it completely turned towards a different way. Understood? So that's what the thing is. You were expecting something else, and it turned out to be the something else. And also the symbolic meaning of an allegory may be political, religious, historical, or philosophical. And it might possible, it they will symbolify it as a political story. They might symbolify as a religious or historical or philosophical story as well. Then next is utopian dystopian novel. I know the word is something like you might have not heard it previously, so don't worry about that. I'll explain it to you. Utopia is an imaginary community or society processing the ideal qualities. Now, you must have understood a bit, I guess. So basically, a utopia is an imaginary community or society possessing the ideal qualities. Now, see, when we talk about society, so there are all kinds of people around us, right? And we can't say people are bad, people are good, or something like that. Every individual holds different qualities, different characters, and everyone is good, and they have some negative qualities also at the same time. If I talk about myself, if I talk about yourself, everyone is like they hold some of the good and even the bad characteristics or the bad qualities. Maybe I have so many good habits, I have so many good characteristics in me, but I might have something negative in me also. I might be a short tempered kind of a person, or anything like that. So that's what it is all about. It's not necessary everyone to be 100% perfect, and to hold all the good qualities in just a one person, one individual. It's not possible kind of life, and that's what it is about. That when the novelist write these kind of stories, utopian or dystopian novel, so they basically talk about the imaginary community, a community or a society which doesn't even exist, which is fictional, means there is no existence of such people, means it's all imaginary. The society what he will be talking in utopian novel will be imaginary. The society, the community will be completely imaginary. And he will be talking about the ideal qualities, means the qualities which might be hard to find in today's generation, or in in the current society, which might be difficult to find some of the certain qualities. He will discuss about that also. He will be talking about the ideal qualities. It is a common literary theme, especially in science fiction or speculative fiction. So it is a very common literary theme, basically, especially in science fiction and speculative fiction. Then comes the psychological novel. A psychological novel is the work of fiction that treats the internal life of the protagonist or even the other characters as much as the external factors. Now, see, psychology, you know what is psychology, but what is psychological novel? When novelist talks about the internal issues, the internal life of a protagonist, we in the previous lecture we discussed, right, the internal factors and external factors. Internal factors is something, if we talk about internal conflict and external conflict, so internal conflict is the conflict where the protagonist, means the main character, the hero, the lead character, deals with his own internal issues, like some psychological issues or whatever it is. Maybe he has some fear, some phobia, or maybe he is going through a tough time, so he had to suffer a lot internally. He is unable to come out with his emotions properly, and suffering a lot inside and unable to share it with anyone. So that's what the suffering, the pain he is going through, the things he is going through, maybe the hatred kind of feeling he is there in him. So that's what it is about, where the character deals with his internal issues or internal life he discusses. It won't be about the external factor, means there won't be any conflict with the other characters in the story, but the whole conflict or the whole story will revolve around the characters inside or the internal issues. And there might be the discussion about the another character's issues also, that will be also the internal issues, but there won't be any external factors. There will be only internal factors. Then stream of consciousness novel. Now, what is stream of consciousness? So, stream of consciousness is a phrase coined by William James in his treatise Principles of Psychology, 1890. So basically, the stream of consciousness, this phrase have been coined by the William James, and he used this phrase in his treatise Principles of Psychology in the year of 1890. For the first time, he used this phrase in his writing. It means the flow of thoughts. Conscious, we know what is conscious, but what is stream of consciousness? So basically, here he is talking, stream of consciousness is basically the flow of thoughts. And what he is talking, incidents in the plot are the sequence of their occurrences. Now, always if we are conscious, there will be the flow of thoughts in our mind, right? And that's what he's talking about, the flow of thoughts that he's talking. And in this plot, the incidents will be in the sequence of their occurrences, means the writer will write the details the way it occurred. Understood? Like for example, I will just give you a very simple example. You gets a question where you have to arrange the sentences as it occurred in the passage, right? Means the sentences will be jumbled, will be arranged in a wrong way, in a wrong manner. And what you will be asked in a question to do, you will be asked to rearrange the sentence as per it occurred in the passage or in the story. Understood? That's what it is about. Means the writer will write the incidents, the events, the way it occurred in actual. The novelist narrates them as they enter the mind of the character. and they, like, the way, like for example, if I am writing a story and one by one the incidents are coming into my mind, like into the flow of my thoughts, it's coming one by one, like yeah, this happened and that happened, and due to this the another step took place. So the way it will occur in my mind, I will keep writing it. Understood? Now, Bildungsroman novel. The German word Bildungsroman indicates growth. So it's basically, the Bildungsroman word is a German word which indicates growth. The fictional biography or autobiography is concerned with the growth of the protagonist's mind, spirit, and characters from their childhood to adulthood. So basically, it might be a biography, it can be a fictional, not real. It will be fictional biography or autobiography, but it will concern with the growth. Like for example, obviously, if we are talking about biography or autobiography, it is about a person's life, right? So when we talk about a person's whole life, whole journey, obviously we talk since from the childhood, right? And then we go to the young age, and then adult, and then the old age, right? So that's what it is, means the person is growing. It's not just physically or age wise, but also, in terms of moral ethics or character. The characteristics will change in the person. So everything is going to change, not just the physical appearance, but internally, with his thoughts also the person changes, right? And that's what the thing that he is mentioning here, that the character's growth, the novelist discuss in this kind of novel. And then later come